Today I made a very special recipe to me. It's a plum torte based on the New York Times recipe. When I was younger, I really hated plums because they were basically like the poor fruit, and I was really poor, and my mom could only afford plums. And I remember I came from school one day and I really craved something sweet. And I only had plums, and I felt like the sky hated me and God did not know that I exist. So basically, I thought, you know what? Let me see what I can do with the plums. And I Googled it and I stumbled on the recipe, which grabbed me not because it contained plums, but because it has a really good history behind it. So basically the plum torte recipe is incredibly old. It's like in the 60s, was published in the New York Times newspaper. And it kept being republished every year, and people could cut it out, like preserve it. So in time, the editor-in-chief said, you know what, everybody has the plum recipe right now, let's forget about it. And they didn't publish it. And basically the New York Times woke up to a ton of angry people writing them, why did you remove the plum torte recipe, put it back, it's really important for us, because to them the plum torte recipe meant a very specific point in time, that the August was leaving, the autumn was coming, so it's the sign that the autumn has come. And since then, the New York Times shares this recipe every September. It's basically a sign that the autumn is here. And I really loved the recipe because it's really easy to make. I was not a good baker, I'm still not a good baker, but it's really hard to miss making this recipe. It's kind of easy. You need flour, you need butter, you need some sugar, you need plums, some salt, baking soda. You just mix it together and that's it. And in an hour it's done. And I remember when I was young, that when I made it, I'm like, oh my God, the plums are the best thing in the world. Like this recipe completely changed my opinion on plums. So yeah, now I make it all the time, and I really love this recipe and the pie. I love baking because it's a very meditative process, and it's also a process that humbles me, because it's never as good as you think you are. I'm never as good at baking. I'm never as good at baking as I imagine myself to be, and every time I pull out a pie or a torte or a cake, I'm like, you know what? There's a lot to learn in the world still. So yeah, but baking is really therapeutic, and cooking in general. Actually, I love using recipe videos as background to fall asleep because I have a bit of insomnia. And I did not know what videos to use. I hated listening to podcasts or audiobooks because I constantly became interested in what the people were saying, and it did not help with sleeping. But recipes actually were really good. And that's how I actually learned how to cook, because a lot of tips, they were talking about how to braise things and butter things, and just all these techniques that I picked up when I was trying to sleep, and I actually use them in the kitchen all the time. So yeah, baking and cooking really helps my mental health.
Oh my God, this is beautiful.
But it is good that you came hungry.